Welcome to Come Draw from the Well. I'm your host, Victoria Fisher, and again, I am joined today by Cynthia Hofmann-Coale, and we're going to continue into part 2 of our conversation on parasites, the mystery of stealth proteins.
We want to help people understand that sometimes it's about what they're putting into their body that's influencing these numbers, and that it's not as simple as just taking a medication
Or taking a supplement.
Or
because
taking a
oftentimes
supplement.
people come in and they say, I read about this supplement, I heard about this, and I should be on this protocol.
Yeah.
So what do you say to clients who say, I think I have parasites, I want to be on a cleanse, I want to try this protocol, I bought this protocol, because I've had clients come in and they're already an established client here coming in and they do their research, which is totally fine because we want clients to be educated, but they take that step and they say, well, I think that this is what I need, so I'm going to buy this protocol.
I watched a podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Right? I watched a podcast, and the podcast said, and it all made sense. I heard every symptom that they talked about, and they said, I believe I have parasites. So I signed up, I bought the protocol, and I'm on this parasite cleanse now.
Yeah.
But I'm not feeling well.
Right.
So can you help me? So that's what we get, right?
Right, absolutely.
That might be some of the
I have seen that. Absolutely.
Right? So
it's
that
not,
might be some of the conversation.
It's not doing what I expected it to. I didn't see the stuff coming out of the toilet that everybody talks about.
Right.
That's the big thing. So, yeah.
Well, because parasites are more than just egg layers, right?
Yeah, they're
cellular,
not just worms. They're not
that's what I had, right? Mine was one cell microorganism, and it was turning my body into simple sugar because it needs what? Sugar to survive. And so if we're on these fake meats, we're getting a whole lot more sugars into our body, and we are feeding their existence.
Right.
Right? So, what do I'm sorry, I didn't mean you.
No, that's okay. So what do you...
I love our rabbit
trails. But with that, so if somebody has this protocol, or they say, I have these symptoms, I got this protocol, and they come to you and say, they kind of want your blessing or your stamp of approval on it. What do you say, or what should we be doing about that? I mean, I know what I do.
Right.
With it.
So first I praise them, right? Because they're hungry. I love people who are seekers. God loves people who are seekers, right? So that's great. And I'm always a fan of saying, look, education is not a bad thing.
Right.
It's just put into the wrong hands, it could be rather dangerous, right?
Absolutely.
And so when somebody comes to me and says, hey, I'm on this program, I read about this supplement with the whole, issue that we're presently, again, in a climate pursuing still to this day, 2 years later. I watched the podcast. I want to be on this supplement. I started taking it, but I'm not really feeling better. Can you test it and see if my body wants it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Especially where parasites are concerned, I'm a big fan of saying, you may very well have parasites, but you also may not be in a place where your body's prepared to get rid of them.
Right.
The parasites might be in there to try to save you from metal toxicity.
Yeah, parasites, they have a design.
They have a design.
Yeah.
And so if you did pick up a parasite, you may not be able to get rid of it because you've got metal toxicity. You may not be able to get rid of it because you've got a retrovirus. And the parasite is adherent to the cell because viruses will take the cell hostage. So you may not be able to move beyond the parasitic influence because there's something else keeping it, in its presence. So I will always say, let's just find out what your body is up against. And if it wants the parasite support, we're gonna maximize its presence, right? But if it's saying not yet, because I've got to down regulate a metal influence or a metal toxicity or a chemical toxicity, like marijuana or other medications, right?
Right.
I mean, people who have medical marijuana cards are causing a chemical disruption to their cell. Because again, even though it's found in nature, I love that conversation. Just because it's taking away your pain, if you're not dealing with why you have the pain, you could be taking it, but if you stop it and the pain comes back, is it really helping?
Right. Yeah.
Right. So sometimes you're over-toxifying the body even in the presence of something natural, like marijuana or CBD or whatever, right?
Right.
And parasites, these rogue proteins, are going to hang out because they're trying to save you.
Yeah.
And so if you try to detoxify and you get worse, could be, right? Because the body is saying, oh, what are you doing? Like you're forcing me to do something. You're telling the liver to do something that it's saying, I need this here because if I get rid of it, this person's going to go downhill.
Right. Yeah. So parasites, again, just to recap that, parasites, not that they're inherently good or bad, but they do have a function.
They do.
When the body's balanced, or when the body's trying to maintain that homeodynamic state.
Stress is being placed on it.
Parasites, they can sequester, so they can hold on to for us, because we're not designed to have aluminum spread on our armpits every single day, or have it injected into our cells as an adjuvant for inoculation. We weren't meant to be breathing it in the air and all of these things. So as a adaptation, these parasites can actually sequester and hold on to those metals for us. Yep. We weren't meant to breathe in toxic mold from a sick building, or have bacteria from a host of different things, or over antibiotic use, which all of that can disrupt everything. Yeah. So these parasites can actually hold on to those things as a safety mechanism for our bodies.
And then we tell them to die, and guess what happens when they die? They off gas. And when they off gas, everything they're holding on to. So as you're talking, the Lord gives me this vision. So the ecosystem of an aquarium. Mm-hmm. Let's just talk about it, the ecosystem of an aquarium.
Yeah.
And in nature, these fish thrive in this ecosystem, in this environment. And if there isn't a proper balance of the nitrogen, if there isn't a proper balance of the oxygen, if there isn't a proper balance of the biome that's required for the thriving of these fish, and they're off gassing because fish poop, and they burp, right? I mean,
they have a metabolic system.
Right? And we feed them. What are we feeding them?
Who even knows?
Who even knows, right? These flaky things, right? But we're asking them to thrive in this ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Well, all of a sudden we start to notice what on the walls of the aquarium.
There'll be scum or algae or something.
Right. And so what do we put into the ecosystem in order to be able to clean up the scum?
Bleach. I don't know. Not bleach.
Snails.
Oh, we put little snails. Okay. All right.
Snails.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And snails do what to the wall of the aquarium? They attach themselves. And then what they do is they go along the walls of and they eat the mold.
Right.
They're designed to do that. They're parasites by nature. They're vectors that thrive off of the leftover. Mm-hmm. It's what snails do. It's what mussels do. It's right.
Yeah.
These are vectors that pull in toxicity and they hold on to it. These are bottom dwellers, right? That clean up the ecosystem in nature.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have them. That's a visual imagery of natural parasites within the cellular metabolic body. It acts like that. It creates the harmony within the ecosystem of our gut.
Yeah.
And when in balance, it can. Now, when the year I am not clear on, but there was early on at the Well of Life Center, there was a story where DuPont had dumped chemicals into a lake.
Like 2009, 2010.
Something like that, right?
Somewhere around
right.
There,
so it was. There was a dumping of chemicals. So it might have been earlier. I think it was earlier on, dumped in the ecosystem of a lake in North Carolina, and people in the area. Again, unknown to the people in the area, started becoming very sick. There was a sharp rise in cancerous symptomatology, and it started with gut issues. It started with throwing up and diarrhea and, all of these like intestinal problems. And it was found out that, of course, this lake or pond or, water source outside of the DuPont factory was toxic. And the way they solved the problem was they shipped mussels from Prince Edward Island. They had gotten all of these mussels that were farm raised, off of the coast, and they brought it and they dumped them into the pond,
Mm-hmm.
and literally within 24 to 48 hours, the pond was totally clear from the chemical presence that DuPont had dumped into there,
Mm-hmm.
and every mussel was floating at the top.
Dead.
They were literally dead.
Yeah.
But the lake
was clean. They did their job.
They did their job.
Yeah. So now that's grand scale. Let's do the microcosm that is our body and put that into this little habitat.
That's right.
And if we take herbs or we take these protocols and do these big old flushes, we're going to, number one, kill off what's meant to save us,
right.
or at least to hold on until our body has the resources and the
to
ability.
deal with it. Yeah.
And then we're killing that off, and then we're also dumping all that. So we have this, basically this toxic sludge that's being released.
And it's like a vicious cycle.
Right.
Right. And so one of the things that we have found that are really successful is healthy binders, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a good healthy binder in place, nature has always provided that for us. If we look at historically, you can read nutritional deficiencies, health and nutritional deficiencies, Weston A. Price. You can, our history of, with Royal Lee, that when we look at his stories and we read his research from the early 1920s, where he talked about, again, the gut microbiome and the protomorphogen, or, organ health.
Right.
One of the things that they knew, and we've known since the beginning, is if you put a good, healthy binder in place, they were eating Spanish black radish.
As a food.
As a food.
Right.
It's a natural binder.
Mm-hmm.
It's grown from the earth.
Right.
They would eat it. They'd root cellar it in the winter time, so that they had it when they were eating what in the winter time? More proteins.
Right.
That's when they would eat their proteins, is in the winter.
And they would also then have fermented foods with that as well.
Correct. And they wouldn't introduce the fermented foods until late winter, early spring, to reculture the gut and prepare the gut for what? Nature.
Yep. So spring and summer, when things living would come up.
And then the body could handle breaking down those proteins properly, right?
Yeah.
And so we know that binders are really important in the story.
Okay.
And so if the binders are in place and you begin the die-off, if the binders are in place, you're not going to retoxify. It's not going to be picked up in the bloodstream and then cause, brain fog and cause gut distress, because the binders are going to carry that toxicity out instead of, and the parasites will in truth, the parasites will gladly give it up because, their life cycle is shortened, and the adults will die and then babies will be born because they're going to be laying eggs somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Or they're going to replicate as one-celled microorganisms and cause problems, which is where I was at, right? So if we are smart and we really are doing a nice job of gut binding, then eventually the parasites are like, oh my word, and then they just start dumping for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
They start dumping because the cell knows how to do that. And you don't have to force it, but you can give it what it needs so that it gently starts to, do what it's been designed. And sometimes it needs a little glutathione. Sometimes it needs a little bit of help to remember. But what I love about what we do is that nothing is a lifelong process, right? It's a cycled process.
Yeah, and it's never, okay, this is the protocol that you need to be on
forever
to maintain health. Yes, everybody should be taking this, and this is what you need to take to have healthy cells or healthy tissue.
Unfortunately, I don't think as a society we can escape not having some sort of support throughout the course of our lives from this point forward.
Yeah, just
I
too much.
I would say that I kind of saw that coming early on. I remember having that conversation in one of my live lectures where somebody asked me, at what point are you going to be free from nutrition? And I said, never.
Yeah, on this side of heaven, the environment that we live in, the toxicity, it's the emotional toxicity, the physical toxicity that we're up against, the non-natural food products that we're almost now, we don't really have a choice somewhat.
But they're working really hard.
Right, they're taking that choice away.
Yeah, they're working really hard to
yeah.
shut down, again, because it's the whole idea that what God created is not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're working really hard to take that away. So I'm a huge fan of sustainable farming. I'm a huge fan of building up a network.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to have to be little pods of benefits to one another.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt.
Yeah, and even referring back to another book that we read as part of the Well of Life is the getting back to the basics of human health.
Oh my word, easy read.
That's it's super easy read,
and that's great bedtime work.
Yeah, but also it talks about how the value of vitamin C, for instance, in an orange. So 50, 60, 75 years ago, the amount of vitamin C that was in an orange and it's vastly different from even an organically grown orange today.
Correct.
Because of the adulteration of soil, because of the pollution in the environment, because we just don't have the integrity of the raw materials or even the seed integrity that we used to have.
When you take the organic orange and even put it up against the commercial orange,
it's pretty similar.
It's, dietarily, right?
Mm-hmm.
The difference is size.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So this is smaller, this is huge,
mm-hmm.
and you're going, I want more, right? But what are you getting?
Yeah.
You're getting more full, but you're not necessarily getting full.
Yeah,
right?
You're not getting the full nutritional value there.
You're not.
So because of that, we almost need, it's a need now that we need to supplement on some level. Yeah. Because of that. So
yeah, and minerals are a game of cofactors, right? So we're always going to be playing that pinball game of balance if we're not getting balanced food.
Right.
And anything fake going into the body is going to cause the deficiency, and you will always be in a state of deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what would you say for a client then? Yeah, we talked about, somebody brought in, or even a non-client, if somebody is truly like, I feel like this is something I need to work on, take a step back from like, okay, we need to do a flushing protocol. What's a good action item or something that somebody can implement even from home or just in their daily routine? Is there anything that we could just recommend? Not even just recommend, but just bring it as a part of your day-to-day life.
Yeah. Yeah. Apple cider vinegar.
Apple cider vinegar.
Apple cider vinegar.
Okay.
Hands down. That you can't. It's a win-win. Mm-hmm. It is an absolute win-win. If you are in need of it, you're not going to want it, right? It's going to smell. It's going to be offensive.
I remember as a brand new client back in 2009, and my daughter was 6 years old at the time, almost 6. She said, and we both were not having the whole apple cider vinegar thing. That was something that right off the bat we were told to do. And she said, "Mommy, why does it smell so bad?" But eventually, she said, "Mommy, why does it smell so bad but taste so good?" Eventually. Right. So, and I tell clients from the beginning, I started out because I started out as a client. I've walked this walk, and Cynthia has walked this walk. We know what we've experienced it firsthand. Yeah. So I told people I would do the tiniest teaspoon of apple cider vinegar in a big old mug of warm water and probably a good quarter cup of honey. Not even exaggerating.
I know.
I could not handle it. Yeah. Just couldn't handle it. Didn't want it. Didn't like it. It was disgusting.
Yeah, you weren't very happy.
No, I wasn't. But the more I drank it, the more my body actually realized, hey, this is something good. This is doing something good for me.
It knows.
Yeah, so as I got more used to it, it was less and less honey, more and more vinegar, less and less water, so I wasn't watering it down as much. Yeah. So that's something that, like you said, if at first it's not gonna be pleasant.
No, and if people drink it and they say it smells like feet, you need it. Yeah. You need it in a very big way. Yeah. If people come into your house and say, what smells like feet, you need to make them one. Okay. I mean, in all honesty, because that's it's
very interesting.
It is. It's all the olfactory firings within the brain that says, sometimes the thing that is, it's like liver, right? Mm-hmm. The most offensive thing is liver. Yes, Chris. And yet, all of the research shows that the importance of organ meat.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? So when and all of Europe, by the way, knows that. I mean,
we used to know that.
We used to know that in our
until
country.
we got super smart 100 or so years ago.
Then we started mass producing. Yeah, right. It's called the Industrial Revolution. Mm-hmm. Right. And it saved. And it saved. Because I know I used to eat those TV dinners. was raised on them because I had, 8 brothers and sisters, and my mom occasionally wanted to go out on a date, and so she would like throw the TV dinners in, and we considered that like grand meals.
Treat, yeah.
Yeah, it was a treat.
Yeah.
I digressed. I will tell you something that was, and you know this, apple cider vinegar was part of my story from the time I was a little girl. And we were not a sick family. We didn't go to the doctors. We didn't have to go to the doctors. Right. When we weren't well, it was cod liver oil and it was apple cider vinegar. To the degree that when my father retired from his role as vice president in AT&T and was a workaholic and needed to find a job for himself, he created his own company. And at the time that my father created his own company, his company was the original Uber. His company was the original personal service company. And my father would take people to and from the airport. My father would drive dogs across country if they were going to be moving. Remember my dad did that. And when he was developing this personal service business of being able to be that extra wheel, car for families that had 2 income families, and children needed to get to ballet lessons and get picked up at school, and grocery shopping needed to be done for an elderly person who couldn't get there. Somebody who was working full time in their family had a member that had dementia. My mother would go and be that personal service person alongside of whatever the family's needs were. My father's company met them. And when they were looking for what to name their company, they named it Mother in the Barrel. Mother in the Barrel, right?
Interesting.
And the reason why is because when Mother, the apple cider vinegar, was culturing, when it was aging, this mother floated to the top. And there was a time and story in the history of all of, creation, where they viewed the mother as a bad thing. And so what they would do is they'd skim off. They would take off the scum. They would take the stuff out of the way, stuff that nobody else wanted. So they had this nice, clean, clear, and look at Heinz apple cider, right? Clean, clear. There's no mother in Heinz apple cider vinegar.
Right.
And that was the mass production of apple cider. We thrived on the mother. So what the business was called was Mother in the Barrel, because my parents do all the stuff that nobody wanted to
That's
do.
Awesome.
The scum off the top.
Yeah.
And so we were raised on the mother.
Yeah, and that's what you want when you're drinking or using apple cider vinegar. So there's not just one brand out there, because now so many people have caught on to the wonder that is apple cider vinegar. You can get it in almost any grocery store, but you want the mother. You want that those cloudy bits floating around, because that's what's giving you that.
And it ages, right? And as it ages, it gets darker and it gets richer, and it just takes on. I mean, it depends on how quickly you go through your bottle, right?
Yeah.
but I mean, if it's forgotten, it doesn't go back.
Right. No, it doesn't.
It just continues to thrive as long as you're as long as you're aware of its importance.
Right. Absolutely.
But I'm hands down. If you want to know the one thing that is going to be vitally important, it's going to be apple cider. And I will tell you that when all of my mother's children got away from the house and were free, from the restrictions, we didn't grow up with snacks. We used to have to go to people's houses to eat snacks. We had 3 meals per day that were offered to us, and if you were not there when the meal was put out, you didn't get that meal. So because there was no snacks, there was no eating in between. We had breakfast, we had lunch, we had dinner, and there was an appropriate amount of time between each meal. There was rarely an evening snack. That just didn't happen unless we were, watching on Sunday, the Disney Channel. Yeah. Right?
The
Wonderful World of Disney. Right? The National Geographic show on Sunday nights, So just really rare. And we had cod liver oil and apple cider vinegar. That was part of our daily intake. And we were not a sick family.
Right.
It wasn't until we got out from underneath that model that we started introducing processed foods, because we were, we weren't taught balance. We weren't educated as a children to understand why my parents made some of the decisions. Yes, we didn't have a lot of money when we had so many children.
Right.
But we didn't understand
the why behind it. Yeah,
correct.
Absolutely. So with apple cider vinegar, I do want to make 2 little caveats or notes with that. So number 1, if you're actively dealing with ulcerative symptomatology in the gut, don't want to pour an acid on it necessarily, so you would want to hold off on using apple cider vinegar. You can and should still use it though within your food preparation. Yeah. So we can use apple cider vinegar as a cleaning and a fruit and veggie wash. Yep. Because it just naturally, depending on the soil that it's grown in, there can be parasitic resonance or bacterial resonance on that produce.
Right. Soak it.
So soak it with apple cider vinegar in water, and you can add a little baking soda to it because that can also help to remove some of the pesticide residue as well.
Correct. Yeah.
So there are other ways that you can draw benefit from apple cider vinegar.
Now they have apple cider gummies.
They do have gummies. They have tablets. You can take an apple cider vinegar bath.
You can. And hey, that upregulates in the lymphatic system because the skin is the largest living organ we have. So if you're soaking in an apple cider vinegar bath, you're taking it into the lymphatic system, and you're going to start benefiting that cell, which is going to heal the ulcerative symptomatology that's in the gut.
So there are many different ways that we can bring that in. So if you feel like that's something that you may need,
then
go for it. Yeah?
Yeah. Hey, listen, make friends with the mother.
And I do also want to, we're talking about apples in an apple family, and we did talk about this in a previous episode when we were talking about different diets and fads. Apple a day.
Apple a day.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And, and please don't feel like, that you have to cut it and you have to sprinkle it with cinnamon, you have to dip it in, nut butter with coconut oil, those are great, but just grab it and eat it.
Skin on.
Yeah. Now, if you're eating it with the skin and you get that in the back of your throat, like it feels like it's scratchy or itchy in the back of your throat, just peel the skin.
Yeah.
And or you could even take that apple, put it into boiling water, take it out, parboil it, right? Take it out right away. Put it in a cold ice bath and then eat it, and you won't have that problem. Right. There's just an enzyme on the skin that the body is not able to break it down.
You can also just look for more of the traditional variety of apple instead of old-fashioned apple. So go for the Jonathan's Ida Red, Macintosh, Braeburn, that kind of thing. Even Granny Smith it can be included in that. But when you go for the Gala, the Honey Crisp, all the ones that everybody loves because they're really sweet. They're actually hybridized or hybrids of hybrids from traditional varieties.
Sure, well, they're GMO.
they're modified. Without being genetically modified, they're modified.
They're modified.
Yes, they're actually patented. So if you look at the different apple varieties, those apple varieties are patented for their tree, and you can look at what their lineage is.
Well, it's like my Labradoodle, right? I mean, it's like 2 of the really, really good dogs they decided to make into one.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the same thing. You take 2 really good things and you make them. You
bring them together.
Them together, and they make something good.
Yeah.
But go back to the antiquated, those good tried and true apples that break down really nicely.
Yeah. And then you can also cook it with the skin on as well. So again, if we're looking at people who have an intolerance or do have some severe gut dysregulation for various reasons, if you cook it with the skin on, you're releasing the pectin, and that pectin can actually heal the gut.
And then you just make the applesauce and
with
you
the
do
skin
the
on.
applesauce. Yeah. You just eat the applesauce that way. But apple, it's like apple a day does keep the doctor away.
Absolutely.
And so if you can't just eat it, then get the apple cider vinegar for sure, and it's a win-win.
Awesome. Any other last tidbits, things we want to throw out there?
I think that if I've learned anything in the 17 years, and it's been longer actually, it's been 20 years since I've been ill.
Wow.
It was 20 years. Crazy, right? If I've learned anything in the last 17 years of God's vision, for the Well of Life Center, it's that nothing is really that immediate. It's taken a while to get you to the broken place that your body may be in, and it's going to take some time to get it out of it. out of that degree of distress.
Okay.
Breathe. Just breathe. You know, don't ever feel like, you know, the gun is at your head, right? Because the truth is that in the presence of oxygen, disease cannot dwell.
Right.
So sometimes we are in the distress state with our guts. We've invited these stealth proteins in. We're allowing the immune system, you know, to go in the midst of that fight, to go into the depth of that fight, because we're not breathing. We're not drinking water, which is rich in oxygen, right? We're dehydrated. You know, there's lots of things that are happening that have kind of invited this dysregulation to take place.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes from the simple practice of breathing. Just breathe. Yeah. Take a breath. Step back. Be still. And it's amazing in that silencing of the heart. Turn off all of the chatter and the chaos that's taking place. Mm-hmm. And just rest in knowing that you have been purposely designed with the goodness that God intended for you. And when the body is in a state of dysregulation, He's calling you to the throne for the purpose of hearing something He needs you to hear. Mm-hmm. And so my recommendation, regardless of where you are in your walk of faith, is just step back and just breathe. And don't feel that you have to rush into the battle, because the battle's already happening. And if you rush in, you may be creating more chaos than the body can handle. Mm-hmm. Step back. That's my two big takeaways.
Good. That's awesome. Well, thank you for that. It's been this. I love talking with you. I think I learn things. Hopefully those who are listening learn things. And
for sure.
Put in some good just action items that people can take and know, like you said.
Well, and we love our clients, right?
Yeah,
we love all of mankind. We have not missed the message that God has placed on our hearts when He gave us the vision to help His children, right? Yeah. That's us. Yeah. That's at the very core of who we are. Mm-hmm. And so when we get together and we talk, you know, what we're doing is just sharing what God has you know, already birthed, and I use that term, and they laugh all the time, right? But already birthed within us. It's just our opportunity to put it out there, to make a difference, to be that we want to be influencers, but we want to be influencers of education. We don't want to get the people to the place where they're afraid. Right. We want to empower. Our job is to empower them. Our job is not to get them to a place where they feel afraid of what God intended for them.
Right, absolutely. So don't fear parasites. Don't go on a war path with them.
No, because they will bite back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that wraps up our episode for today. So thank you for joining us at Come Draw from the Well. Yeah. And if you have questions, let us know. You can actually go to our website and get information there. And we'll be talking about more and more topics. So don't run away from the whole parasite topic. So and share this podcast, because if you want to be an influencer in today's world, then equip yourself with the tools to be able to be that influencer, and share this podcast, because there's information out there that maybe you might not be in need of, but somebody else is. Absolutely. So by passing it on, you know, you are, you know, it's like the Fabergé commercial, you know, you tell two people, they tell two people, and so on and so on. And the world changes because we're empowering people towards change. Absolutely. And not putting them into a state of bondage. Yeah. So as you come and draw to the well, draw others with you. Bring others with you. That's it. Feed them. Yeah. Feed. Absolutely. Thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us. Hey, no problem. Take care.